Good morning, everybody. I am doing my soap opera Sundays today, like I've been doing the last few weeks. Doing it earlier than usual, though, because I don't have a lot of time. But I still wanted to talk about it because I did check out General Hospital over the past week, like I said I would last week, and not as impressed as I was hoping, but I kind of expected this to happen. Some backstory, much like I talked about a few weeks ago with Young and the Restless. I hadn't watched Young and the Restless for a number of years because I used to watch all the soaps and talk about them on this channel once upon a time. Um, but at least with Young and the Restless, I would attempt to somewhat check it out every now and then. But General Hospital, I literally have not seen a second of the show since the end of 2023. So it's been 2 years since I have watched General Hospital. Shout out to Devin in the chat. Not the best time to check out General Hospital. You would probably enjoy some classic General Hospital, though, to be honest. The problem I found jumping back into General Hospital was the similar problems to when I left. First of all, I just don't like their producer, Frank Valentini. He is just one of my least favorite soap opera producers of all time. And he has this knack for just having these really bloated casts. There's just so many characters on General Hospital that trying to jump back into the show and figure out what's happening with everyone is nearly impossible in just 1 week's viewing. And I feel like the story that was easiest to jump into was only easy because it was ending and it was getting a lot of time because the story was ending. That being the whole Quartermain drama with Monica passing away, sadly, because the actress passed away not this year. Yes, this is live today, Devin. I've been trying to do these soap opera things live. So it was good to see Erica Slezak, who, obviously is One Life to Live royalty. I've been trying to watch One Life to Live on Patreon, although I'm behind right now, but trying to get back to watching that. And I feel like they gave her a character to tie her to this main family, to make her Monica's sister. And obviously, Frank Valentini was the producer of One Life to Live. That was his show. But I feel like in giving Erica Slezak this character, they kind of made Erica Slezak a villain, but they didn't want the audience to turn on her because she's soap opera royalty. And in doing so, I felt like this week they threw Tracy a little too hard under the bus. So the story that I could jump into trying to figure out was somehow Drew was going to get the house in the will because of some fake will that I'm assuming Martin and Ronnie, who is Erica Slezak's character, set up this scheme to get the house. Apparently, since last time I watched, Drew is now quite the villain, which he was not when I was no longer, well, at the end of me watching 2 years ago. I've read some stuff online about just how annoying of a villain Drew is. I kind of got to see that this past week. And, I don't mind him being a villain, but it seems like a lot of fans want him dead. And I guess he was shot a few months ago and wasn't killed in the shooting, which like fans were hoping. So, a week of Drew as a villain wasn't the worst. But what I didn't like about the story is that when Tracy finally figures out that Monica, well, she found Monica's real will and she learned that she got the house. Um, Instead of the family just embracing that, the rest of the Quartermains, it seemed like they wanted everyone to feel sorry for Ronnie, even though Ronnie was apparently in on this scheme to keep the house away from the family and give it to Drew. And yet somehow Ronnie came out the victim in that. I don't know. That was very strange. Maybe if anyone that joins the chat that watches General Hospital, Kaiwan, shout out Kaiwan. I think that this whole story with Monica's sister is very One Life to Live, callback writing to One Life to Live. They seem to want more. It was more for One Life to Live fans than anything you're saying. What is the villain Drew? They don't want his character to be smarter than They just wanted sort of friends. I don't know what you're saying about Drew Kaiwan. I mean, I didn't mind Drew as a villain, but what I did mind is that the whole family walked out on Tracy. And I get that Tracy is always going to be written as like a villain herself that would come up with schemes herself for to get her own way. But like the family should not have walked out on Tracy for Ronnie, who was clearly the villain in the story. At least for me jumping in, if Ronnie was in on the plan with Martin, why was the family walking out with Tracy? I thought it was stupid, especially since the first episode I watched was kind of good with the Tracy stuff. It was almost a little heartwarming, but I feel like the show always wants Tracy to be the, I guess the what's the word I'm looking for, like a black swan type with the hospital, the with the family that's always kind of shunned from the family. Shout out to Monica M. Good morning in the chat. But yeah, that was kind of the only storyline that I was able to jump into easily. The rest of the stuff was confusing because, like I said, there's so many characters. It was far easier to jump into Young of the Restless. As boring as that show can be, at least it's not hard to jump into. This was hard to jump into. Apparently, there's some new villain named Mr. Sidwell. He seems to be the villain of the month type deal, where General Hospital has these villains come in every year to kind of go up against, apologies for these damn sirens, that kind of always go up against Sunny and company. And that's what I'm assuming this Mr. Sidwell is the latest person to try and do that. In trying to figure things out, it seems like Jordan works for Mr. Sidwell. Seems like he has this son Marco, who is, I guess, in a relationship with Lucas. I can't really tell, but I'm assuming so, seeing as the whole plan was to get Marco to get Lucas to move in with them to distract Lucas from figuring out something. Couldn't understand what exactly Lucas might figure out, but I had to laugh when I saw that Joss now works for the WSB. I thought that was ridiculous. And I thought that she looked ridiculous working for the WSB. This show has never known what to do with Joss. I feel like they will try and do anything to make that character work, and it usually falls flat. And this is the most ridiculous idea I've seen for Joss, to be some sort of agent. But whatever. I guess what I really, to sum up my experience of coming back into watching General Hospital, it was confusing because there's too many characters. They have characters doing things that they probably shouldn't, like Josh working for the WSB. It's hard for me to accept a new villain like Mr. Sidwell, because he's not gonna defeat Sonny and Jason. So like what's the point of having a villain to go up against Sonny's mob ties? It never tends to work out, so that's just redundant. And some of the characters that I loved that when I was still watching 2 years ago were barely on. Anna was getting kidnapped. That's, I guess, par for the course with Anna. Trina was not on all week. Ava was barely on. And when she was on, she didn't get a lot of time. They seem to maybe want to test her with being with Mr. Sidwell, which isn't the worst idea, because I feel like Ava as a character thrives when she is dealing with a big bad like Mr. Sidwell. But I don't know. Let me go through some of my notes here to see if anything else interesting was happening. I mean, I enjoyed the Portia stuff a little bit with Jordan. I had to go try and read online to see what was actually happening with this story. And it seems like Portia's actually having an affair while simultaneously being jealous that Curtis might be trying to have a relationship with Jordan, or just a friendship with Jordan. So Portia confronting Jordan this week, I guess, was supposed to be ironic because Portia's been kind of being a hoe lately from what I've read online. But I don't mind a messy character. So if Portia's being this messy while simultaneously being jealous, I mean, at least there's potential for some soapiness there. I got to see the character of Geo for the first time, who is trying to become, well, I guess is a quartermain, but trying to get used to being a quartermain. And they seem to have paired him with Emma, which they were a cute little young couple, I guess. They didn't get a lot of airtime either. And Valentine is in prison, and for some reason, Carly was visiting him with the disguise. So yeah, there's like too many storylines for somebody trying to get back into General Hospital. I'm gonna give it a few more weeks. Maybe I can figure out what's actually happening in these storylines. Um, None of them were necessarily like super intriguing, though. You know, at least when I picked up Young and the Restless a few weeks ago, I was into the Holden and Claire pairing. There's nothing really jumping out to me other than getting to see Erica Slezak act again, especially opposite Tracy. It was good television, but now that storyline's over, so we'll see what happens. I guess I am going to keep watching though, like I said. Let's see. Kaiwan is saying, wait and see how they treat Willow because Willow's trying to get her kids back from Carly. I feel like back when I was watching, they always treated Willow like shit, so that's no surprising. Devin says there's no greater villain than Vanessa McBride. That's a farce. Kaiwan says Trina is basically a background character. I mean, that's not surprising. They've always wanted Trina to be a background character, even though she was popular. That's another thing I'll say about General Hospitals. They certainly still have their black characters boxed into a corner with each other instead of being able to thrive with the rest of the cast. Let's move on to some of these other soap operas, though. I do want to move over to Young and the Restless while I still have some time, because actually I quite enjoyed last week of the Young and the Restless, mostly because, as I've been saying, the LA story was the only good thing about the show. Every story happening in Genoa City was either really stupid or boring. Luckily, this past week, like 4 out of the 5 episodes pretty much focused solely on the LA stories. We had Claire and Holden having sex, which is how we ended last week. And as I've said, I do feel like this is one of the only couples in soap operas right now that actually has chemistry. Now, their sex scenes were a little much. They were just rolling around in the sheets, and they still had clothes on. But it is daytime. You can only go so far with love scenes. But I thought, despite that, they're still a hot couple. So good on them. However, after that, it seemed like Claire was kind of maybe just using Holden for a little fling, a little freedom fling, and in discussions with her mom after that, it seems like she still does want Kyle. We also got some backstory about what exactly was going on between Holden and Audra. The backstory wasn't exactly riveting, but it seemed like Audra was, I guess, at first she stole some guy's wallet and was scamming the guy out of money. And Holden, in his telling this to Claire, was saying that he tried to stop it. And then Audra set him up to take the fall for the money. And then in the future sent him 100,000 and he kept it. And that was like a thank you from Audra to him for, I guess, taking the fall. He kept the money and he's telling Claire that if Audra goes down, he goes down too. But then later in the week, when Audra and Holden had scenes, it seems like there might be more to the story, and maybe Holden was more involved with the scamming than he's letting on to Claire. I'm hoping they don't make Holden too bad of a character, because I'm hoping the show can circle back to Claire and Holden, even though they have Claire saying she still wants Kyle, because Claire and Kyle don't have chemistry. So that would just be boring. And I feel like the way they've written Kyle since I started watching again a few weeks ago is that he's been more of a obsessive stalker to Claire than anything else. So I was disappointed that they went the route that Claire just was using Holden for a fling, but it's a soap opera. I'm sure the story is going to be that Kyle is eventually going to find out that Claire and Holden slept together. He's not going to like that. So that's going to be the tension for Kyle and Claire, but I'm not exactly, into those two as a pairing. And then we had Roger Howarth, as we talked about last week, he is playing Matt, a returning character. I still wish he would have just been a totally new character. I think it would have been better. I don't think it had to necessarily be tied to Sharon and Nick's past. I feel like this was just Josh Griffith's way of saying, hey, look, I could actually use show history to tell a story, but I don't think it's in the best way. And I don't think Matt Clark is a character that can go too far and be redeemed when he is a past serial rapist on the goddamn show. So it's quite a choice. But he's clearly going to be the villain for now. Right now, Sharon ran into him and he said he wasn't mad, of course. He's saying Sharon's crazy. Everyone likes to try and make Sharon look crazy. But then when Nick went to the bar and was walking in on the detective who seems to be being paid off by Matt, who is going by Mitch, Nick overheard them talking and realized that it was Matt and punched him in the mouth and threatened to kill Matt if he comes near him or his family again. And Sienna's standing there like, what the hell is going on? Because she only knows Matt as Mitch. It is her husband. And Matt kept telling Sienna these last couple episodes of the week that he doesn't know what Nick's talking about. He don't know who this Matt guy is. And then Mitch brings up the fact that if she's going to keep accusing him of knowing the Newmans before her, he wants her to tell him about her past with Noah Newman. And so that brought us to the recasted Noah Newman this week, who is being played by Lucas Adams, coming over from Days of Our Lives. And I thought he was doing fine in the scenes as the new Noah, getting the bandage off his face. It was very soapy that they have his face bandaged up because it's a new actor, but it's also not bandaged up because his face is supposed to look different to the characters necessarily. They just gave him these scars from his accident. And as good as Lucas Adams was doing in the role, it's just a little icky to me that the storyline is going to be that Noah and Sienna are lovers, because on Days of Our Lives, when Tamera Braun and Lucas Adams were on the show for years, they were playing mother and son. And now they're coming over to Young and the Restless and playing lovers. I just find that casting is a little odd and icky to me. And, I've seen some people saying online, well, on Wally Kurth and Jane Elliott were lovers on Days of Our Lives. And then they went and became mother and son on General Hospital. But that's different. That doesn't hold up to me. I think that's a little easier to accept, characters going from lovers to mother and son, than this opposite. I don't know. It just feels weird if you've watched them be mother and son on Days of Our Lives, and now suddenly they have to play lovers on Young and the Restless. I just don't know if I like that casting. Devin says, ew, that sounds wrong. It is wrong. Kaiwan says, I don't know which character you're saying is the stupidest character. But overall, Young and the Restless was actually one of the more entertaining soap operas over the past week, which I'm shocked to be saying. I don't think it's going to stick that way. I think that Josh Griffith will eventually suck it up because he is a boring writer and he doesn't really have good ideas. And the LA storyline's probably going to get old soon enough, even though it's the only story working right now on the show. So we'll see. A few more things while I have some time. I did watch Days over the past week. They're gearing up for their 60th anniversary. It was a boring past week, though. Not a lot of good. I talked about last week that it seemed like they were ending the week with Alex about to be stabbed, but the way it was directed, I guess Kat was the one that was actually about to be stabbed, and Alex jumped in the way to save her, hit his head. Nothing really came of that, though, and the show was trying to make it look like it was Jeremy that was the person with the knife because it was Halloween and it looked like Jeremy's costume, and we didn't actually get to see who the person with the knife was. But the follow-up to that has been boring. Everything about the show last week was pretty boring. I've been bored by Johnny and Chanel's trying to adopt a kid's story for months now. Um, at least we'll get Sammy back to town for her appearance for the 60th anniversary, but I don't know if that's exciting enough. And I will never care about Leo. So Leo being sad that he doesn't get to keep the baby anymore did nothing for me. Really, the only thing I guess worth talking about is the ending on Friday. I mean, I will say at least Days is giving us Friday cliffhangers. They're not the best directed Friday cliffhangers, but last week we had someone almost being stabbed on a Friday. This week we have little Thomas being hit by a car on Friday because Thomas and Jennifer saw Chad and Kat together, which of course upset Thomas because of what Kat tried to do by pretending to be his mother for a while. And so it's going to play into the storyline about Jennifer being upset with Chad, and it's going to make Chad look worse because his son just got hit by a car because Chad was still talking to Kat. But I just wish these new writers over at Days would decide what kind of show they want to be, because they're also bringing back Dr. Rolf, who is a character that would be, I would say, in the over the top sci-fi era of Days of Our Lives. And yet they're trying to be this character driven family show right now. And I don't know how that combination is supposed to work. And honestly, overall, I'm glad they've gotten away from Ron Calavati's style of writing, which is too over the top. But these new writers are more like Josh Griffith, which is just kind of boring to me. Lastly, want to read some of your comments over this past week on Beyond the Gates. It was a big happy week for fans that enjoyed Andre rejecting Ashley, which was probably the highlight of the week. Let's see some of your comments last week. Harriet Smallwood said, "Wow, you described Ashley as the most abysmal soap character ever. I think that is spot on. I do believe Ashley is one of the most abysmal soap opera characters ever." Quas Sarah said, "Vanessa as a real estate agent, believable. Vanessa as a gangster madame, unbelievable. Vanessa doing that pistol thing during her exit, unbelievable as in stupid. Some other stupid things, Joey's joke, Chelsea's advice, and Pam's insistence that Andre will save Danny's so-called career by also being a model. Some smart things, Naomi's advice to Jacob to hang out with a bunch of kids, which will give him some idea about what kids are really like." Yeah, as I talked about all of last week, the writing for Vanessa is such a joke to me. I don't believe it at all. It's not working. There's another comment I want to read about Chelsea's advice, so we'll get to that. As for Naomi's advice to Jacob to hang out with a bunch of kids to see if he really wants some kids, it's probably some good advice to Jacob, who apparently before they got married didn't want kids and now all of a sudden thinks it's a great idea. NY Claw Lady said, "I am so over Chelsea giving out bad relationship advice. If Naomi doesn't want kids, how does this make her the difficult person in her marriage? Is this a byproduct of Chelsea being kidnapped?" Chelsea has been doing odd things lately. She wants to interfere in her girlfriend's mom's relationship a little too much. I also thought her advice to Naomi was stupid because, as I've said all along, if Naomi and Jacob agree to not have kids before getting married, then Naomi's not in the wrong here. Jacob is. Village Girl said, "This show gives me heartburn. All the characters suck. The Eva and Leslie moment was nice." Some of the writing has hurt the characters lately on Beyond the Gates, I will agree. And I've somewhat enjoyed the Eva and Leslie moments. They started as two of my favorite characters, but the writing for them lately is not my favorite thing overall. Hemi says, "Let's just forget about Leslie running Laura off the road and injecting all that potassium into her, causing her to have a heart attack, and Nicole and everyone else telling Leslie that they know she had something to do with it. Oh, who cares if Laura has permanent heart damage? Let's let Leslie attend Winterfest and have a good old time." Yeah, some of the characters do act a little too lenient with all of the things they've suspected Leslie of doing in the past, which she actually did do. They just couldn't find proof of it. Um, I mean, I will say I don't know how they're supposed to necessarily let Leslie stay away from Winterfest, but I mean, I'm sure they could find bodyguards to do that. And then if Ted really makes Leslie his plus one, he might be the biggest buffoon on soaps right now. Young MRC says, I'm happy that Andre and Danny bonded even more today. So when Ashley tries to run to Andre, his arms won't be available for her to run into. Young MRC was right about that. That was the day before Andre rejected Ashley. Devin, I have a comment of yours here if you're still in the chat. Devin said, Derek is a wicked heel, and Jan saying he's a better guy than Andre kind of pissed me off. Andre's my favorite character on here. Andre showed a lot of emotion, passion, and character work here. His actor did great. It was a very good week for the character of Andre. He definitely became one of my faves, and the writing for him has gotten better and better over the past couple months. So I can see why Andre is your fave. Pulse Graves said, the ever merry-go-round story with Derek and Ashley, enough. As irking as they both are manipulative, though Ashley takes the prize, hoping they are finally over, but this doesn't propel Ashley back to Andre. That would be tedious. Kudos to the actor that plays Andre. He delivered a great performance. I'm in agreement that the best thing might be to write out Ashley and Derek completely now, rather than make most viewers suffer through more of their same tedious dribble. I mean, it's definitely the best thing to do for the Ashley and Derek characters. Unfortunately, I don't think that's what they're doing. I would like to say that the characters can be salvaged, but I don't know if that's true. Like, they had a chance to salvage Derek when they tested him with Shanice, and then they completely ruined that. So I don't know. Let's see. Devin in the chat is saying Andre's the best on BTG. He's definitely the biggest baby face going right now, especially his rejecting Ash right now. I think him rejecting Ashley this week really made him a fan favorite this week, to say the least. Lil's Kitten said, Ashley has some nerve to think that she could call someone's husband to leave his wife after she rejected him for someone else. The selfishness and the audacity. Yeah, the rest of my comments here are just some of y'all that just enjoyed Ashley being rejected. Himi said, I love how organic Danny and Andre's relationship feels. Glad to hear he rejected Ashley. I also hope they write her off. I'm sure there's a holiday Hallmark movie she can appear in. Sale de Robinson says, I love how he rejected her. A. Smith says, yay, Andre. So yeah, this was definitely Andre becoming a fan favorite. Devin says, Jen Jacob, aka Ashley, shared a story on IG saying she once went to meet a boy in college who was with another woman, brought the rejection to reality, and she brought that out in this week's work. Well, she did look very sad after being rejected in that episode at the end of the episode. One more note on Beyond the Gates before I gotta go. I've actually went overtime than what I wanted. I saw someone bring up a good point online over the weekend saying about Samantha's story that it was very odd that Tyrell has yet to tell Samantha that he overheard what Nathan said on Halloween night, which is a pretty glaring writing inconsistency. I don't know why they haven't had Tyrell talk to Samantha about that yet. I sometimes wonder if soap opera writers do something and then forget what they actually wrote. Because I do think Tyrell would have tried to tell Samantha about what he overheard Nathan say. And he has Jessica there as a witness too. So I feel like that should have been brought up to Samantha by now. Sometimes Beyond the Gates likes to do this thing where they prolong things from happening, but they do it in a way where the characters don't do things they should be doing. And this is one thing a character should be doing. Anyway, I gotta go. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. I'm gonna try and stick with General Hospital. It's a little tough though. I'm not gonna lie. It's very confusing. I'm enjoying Young and the Restless, and Days is boring, but it's their 60th anniversary, so I have to at least watch another couple of weeks of that. Let's see. Devin is saying, I politely disagree. Tyrell is a protective older brother. He wants to crush Nathan if he truly ruins his sister. Until then, he'll just hold it down. But everyone in that family doesn't communicate. And that's why they have all the problems that they do. Martin refuses to communicate. He just wants to control everything. Smitty's the only one that tries to have communication going, but he lets Martin usually walk all over him. And then if Samantha and Tyrell are keeping things from each other, I just think that's bad for both of them too. But anyway, I gotta go. I will see you all next week. Well, and I'll see you all for Beyond the Gates all week long.